Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my book, Broken Time Drumming, this one, which I wrote back in 2019 and was published in 2020. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is, how it works, where it came from, and perhaps you might find that this is a book you could be interested in, or maybe it's not for you. Broken time drumming, as a style of music, describes the act of drumming, usually within a jazz or jazz fusion context, although not necessarily so, of keeping time across all four limbs in an improvisational manner. And this creates an effect of a flowing, free, improvised time feel that is not necessarily reliant on recognizable ostinato patterns. In jazz, for instance, we're often reliant on a spang-a-lang jazz pattern, the standard jazz ride pattern, and perhaps a hi-hat on 2 and 4, with comping occurring between the bass drum and the snare drum, which is an important part and an important idiom within the music. Broken time drumming, as practiced and expertly so by people like Jack DeJohnette and Gilmore, Jon Christensen and people like that, we can keep time in a much more fluid sense where all four limbs and different parts of the drum kit are involved in the timekeeping process. Now, because this is so improvisational and not necessarily built on repetitive patterns, this can be extremely difficult to not only practice but conceptualize. How do you even begin to understand and then practice and then apply something that seems so inherently improvisational, so inherently free-flowing, and to an outside observer, perhaps completely random? Well, this is the analysis involved in the book. This was something I got more and more into throughout the course of my career when I was playing a lot of jazz, perhaps back in the late 20-teens, 2017, 18, 19, things like that. And I really got heavily into the likes of Jack DeJohnette. I was really into Keith Jarrett's European trio quintet with Jan Garbarek and, of course, Jon Christensen on the drums. I really loved that sort of free-form, flowing, yet really driving time feel, and I just really wanted to understand it. So I had already worked through the likes of Art of Bop Drumming and Beyond Bop Drumming by John Riley, and especially in Beyond Bop Drumming, he hints at broken time and gives a great overview of it, but I really wanted to study it in depth. So I actually contacted John, and he and I had a few sessions going back and forth over the concepts I was developing, and we differed in some areas. I'm naturally a very analytically minded person, so I like to really get to the bottom of things and understand how a concept works, because if I understand a concept, I can practice it. So what is this book and how does it work? Is it just a sort of analytical explanation? No, it is an exploration that does include analysis of the themes, does include an analysis of the playing, but it's also very practical. So there are actually pages and pages of sets of motifs that demonstrate how ideas of set phrase lengths, maybe a 3-beat motif or a 7-beat motif, can be conceptualized, can be worked onto the drum kit on all four limbs, can be applied in a really practical sense. So this is certainly a method book in terms of its practical application, but there is certainly an analysis as well. There is an analysis of some Jack DeJohnette transcriptions. There are play-along pieces at the back that are specially commissioned to allow you to work on this material. So it really is, as the subtitle suggests, a complete concept for the development of this style, of this approach. The purpose for this, the reason it is half method book and half analysis, is because I don't feel that the methodology would make sense without the conceptual understanding. I could show any student, I've opened to a random page here, a 4-beat motif. And it's got bass drum, snare drum, left foot hi-hat, and ride cymbal all playing in a free and sort of semi-improvisational manner. I could show this to any student I have of any level, of any age and ability and experience, and I could tell them to learn those 2 bars and to play it. Now, for somebody with very little experience in jazz and no understanding of the analysis and the concept behind why they are being asked to play that, it is essentially regurgitating a pattern. So the concept is important to understand, to contextualize why the material that the book is presenting it, and what you as the student are expected to do with it. Now, this is based on an approach of vocabulary. Ultimately, the aim is to improvise completely freely with all four limbs within, let's say, 4 bars of 4/4, which is common for most jazz. Not all jazz, of course, but for most jazz. So there is a suggested concept and methodology for taking these odd-length phrases, counting them in a certain way, practicing them in a certain way, varying them and developing the theme in a certain way, again, involving all 4 limbs, and then, of course, combining them with other phrases in a similar way. And the idea, the underlying approach to all of this is that by practicing some set pieces of vocabulary very, very thoroughly, we actually learn how to break away from those and improvise much more freely. Now, I have done many videos on this concept. I did a number of live streams demonstrating and discussing this concept while I was developing the material, and I've done some videos since, again, demonstrating and discussing the material. And in each of those videos, I take some very specific motifs and I break them down to a very fine level, and I show how they're built, how they're counted, how they're put together, how they can be combined, and then, crucially, how we can kind of leave those behind and break away from them, because the experience and the knowledge and the ability gained from practicing them to such a great degree gives us the ability to break away from them and improvise with similar sounding material. So there's a whole chapter here on self-referential phrasing, self-referential motivic development, which basically means you take the concept of motivic development, taking a theme, embellishing it, varying it, expanding upon it, and you do this in real time. As you play something, at the point of playing it, you then hear that as a new theme and develop it again and again and again. So you are self-referencing your own phrasing, motivic development with regards to your own phrasing as you just played it. So the improvisation is built from this conceptual ground up. But of course, as I've said, there are pages and pages, sets and sets of actual material to get you doing that. So crucially then, who is this book aimed at? Who would benefit the most from this, and who would not benefit from this? Well, without wishing to talk myself out of some potential sales, I would suggest this is not a book for beginners, and this is not a book for somebody with no experience in jazz playing at all. This is an advanced book, or at least it can be. That said, I have some students who are quite comfortable working through it at a slow pace, as long as everything is explained and contextualized thoroughly. So this is for somebody perhaps with a background in some jazz who is really looking to expand and explore a concept very, very deeply. It is also for jazz drummers who have also perhaps got a strong background in jazz but have never explored phrasing outside of the traditional 2 and 4 on the hi-hat and bass drum and snare drumming. It is certainly for drummers who are fans of Jack DeJohnette and Marcus Gilmore, for example, because while this is not intended to be a how they do it, the results and the effects produced are certainly in that same style. So again, I would certainly say this is for fans of Jack's playing and for fans of Marcus Gilmore's playing, with the strict proviso that this is one possible concept and not necessarily the way that those people conceptualize what they are doing. It is quite academic in its approach, so it would suit people that really like to get into the heart of the matter, study it deeply, look at all the analytical sides of it. It is probably not for those drummers that just like to be told exactly what to play. And I don't mean that disparagingly. Sometimes we like a book to just tell us, play this, practice this. This is very much about embracing an improvisational approach and developing an improvisational vocabulary. So it's not for everybody, and it's certainly not for all pieces of music and for all styles. However, there are sections in applying this in a straight sense as opposed to swung. There are sections about how it can transition across to things like funk fusion. We can apply the same motivic concepts to different styles of music, as I have displayed in some of my videos. So ultimately, I think the subtitle of the book, A Complete Concept for the Development of Broken Time Drumming, is actually the most apt way to describe it. It is a complete concept. It studies the basics, it studies the why, the where, the how, the when, and it presents suggested methodologies for developing the material in a way that suits us. And that's it, really. I'm really pleased with how it's come out. It is a nice looking book. It feels nice. It's printed on nice quality paper. it is something that I am proud of. And it is available digitally and physically as a spiral bound copy, so it sits completely flat on the music stand. You can go onto my website right now and download a completely free sample of a good chunk of it to give you an idea of what it's all about, how it reads, how it plays, and that's about it. I would love to hear feedback from those of you that have got the book, and I would certainly welcome any questions from those of you who may consider it. It is taking one corner of that style and looking at it under a microscope and then saying, right, how does this work and what can we do with it? So if that sounds like it might be for you, check it out, have a look at the sample, and again, feel free to get in touch and send me any questions. So that's it. Broken Time Drumming. I hope some of you enjoy it. Thank you very much. See you next time.